All right, so OpenAI just dropped GPT 5.2, their brand new flagship model. And of course, the announcement is full of these really bold claims about a huge leap forward. But, here we go again, right? After the last couple of releases, you really have to wonder, is this a real breakthrough, or is it just another small step forward wrapped up in a giant marketing bow? Because honestly, a lot of us are feeling some serious hype fatigue.
Oh, for sure. We've all been on this ride before. Remember with GPT 5.0 and 5.1, the promises were absolutely revolutionary. And for the first couple of weeks, it actually felt that way. The responses were sharp, they were creative, they were just incredibly capable. But then, almost like clockwork, it felt like the performance just dipped. It felt nerfed. It's this super frustrating pattern that's left a lot of entrepreneurs and developers feeling, pretty skeptical. And they have every right to be.
And look at this. This quote from a Reddit user, Jugger_Death, it just hits the nail on the head. This isn't just some random opinion. This is how a huge part of the community feels. I saw another comment that put it perfectly. Something like, every release is amazing at first, then after 30 days, you notice it's been scaled back. It's that shared experience, that feeling of the model getting dumber over time, that's really at the heart of the trust issue OpenAI has with its power users right now.
Right, so this is the backdrop for the 5.2 release. The promise has always been a revolution, but the reality for so many of us has been, well, useful but small improvements. And then comes that frustrating performance drop, and you still have those persistent flaws, like when it gets lazy or just refuses to do simple things. It's exactly why there was supposedly a code red memo flying around inside OpenAI. They know they're in a tough fight, and they just can't afford another launch that overpromises and then underdelivers.
Okay, so with all that skepticism right here on the table, let's try to cut through the noise. We're just going to ignore the marketing fluff for a minute and focus only on the hard evidence. We're talking official benchmarks, documented reports from sources we can actually check. Let's see what the data really says is new, and more importantly, what it means for people actually trying to get work done with it. So this is the big headline number that OpenAI is really pushing. It's from something called the GDP-Val benchmark, which basically measures how well the AI does on real-world knowledge work. Stuff like drafting legal arguments, building financial models, or planning marketing campaigns. The older GPT-5 model, it could win or tie against a human professional about 39% of the time. Well, according to OpenAI, GPT 5.2 nearly doubles that, winning or tying almost 71% of the time. On paper, at least, that is a huge leap in practical professional capability.
So let's break down where that big jump is actually coming from. This slide shows 3 really key upgrades. First up, factuality. They're claiming a 30% drop in errors compared to 5.1. That's a direct attack on the hallucination problem. Second, there's a pretty solid improvement in coding on a really tough real-world benchmark. But this third one, long context, this is where it gets really interesting. It's apparently the first OpenAI model to get nearly perfect recall on a test for finding specific info buried in super long documents. If you work with dense research papers, long legal contracts, or huge code bases, that's a potential game changer.
All right, so the data does point to some real targeted improvements. But now we have to put those numbers back into the context of all the hype. So it's time for our favorite part, the myth-busting section. We're going to compare the marketing claims directly against the more sober analysis from tech journalists and, the fine print in OpenAI's own announcements.
So the biggest myth out there is that GPT 5.2 is this revolutionary leap that's going to change everything. But the reality, as TechCrunch put it so well, is that it's more of an iterative consolidation. It's not a total reinvention. It's more like they're taking the existing engine and making it more polished, more reliable, and just better tuned for specific professional jobs. It's a significant upgrade for sure, but it's an evolution, not a revolution.
And that leads to the next myth, that this is a massive upgrade for every single person who uses it. The truth is, it's actually much more targeted. OpenAI has been pretty clear that this model is built for professional and what they call agentic tasks. Just think of that as an AI that can handle complex, multi-step projects, like a project manager, not just an assistant that answers one question at a time. So if you're just using it to write emails, you might not notice a huge difference. The real focus here is on letting developers build more powerful AI agents.
So that's the key, right? Understanding how these specific, targeted improvements actually translate into real-world business value. This is where the rubber meets the road. So let's get into the entrepreneur's playbook and see how you can actually use these new capabilities, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. First off, automating complex workflows. Its improved ability to use different tools is huge here.
One CEO who got to test it early said they were able to replace a fragile, multi-agent system with a single, much more reliable mega agent. That's a massive win for efficiency. Second, the improvements in generating things like spreadsheets, presentations, and even UI code are directly useful. And third, customer interactions. OpenAI's own demo showed 5.2 successfully handling a messy travel problem, rebooking flights, dealing with new requests, filing for compensation, all in one conversation where 5.1 failed. That's a better customer service bot right there.
Okay, but to keep our skeptical hats on, we have to talk about what OpenAI isn't putting in their big press releases. Because every powerful new tool has a catch, and this one is no different. It's time to talk about the fine print, the costs, the limitations, and all the unanswered questions that every entrepreneur needs to think about before diving in head first.
And yeah, this really lays out the trade-offs. First and foremost, a 40% API price increase. That's a huge jump that will hit a startup's budget hard. Second, it's a gradual rollout, and it's API first, so you might not even be able to use it yet. And the whole censorship and safety thing isn't going away. OpenAI admits they're still working on over-refusals, and some sources say the guardrails are even tighter now. Oh, and if you were waiting for that promised adult mode for more creative freedom, well, that's been pushed back again to early 2026. So yeah, the model is more capable, but it's also more expensive and, in some ways, even more locked down.
Which brings us right back to that fundamental trust issue. The biggest unknown is still, will this amazing performance we're seeing today get quietly nerfed in a month? History tells us to be a little cautious. And sure, benchmarks are one thing, but how does it actually compare to models from Google or Anthropic in your day-to-day real-world work? And finally, the ultimate question for any business. With a 40% price hike, is the performance boost really worth the extra cost, or is sticking with 5.1 the smarter financial play for now?
Okay, so we've looked at the hype, the data, the practical uses, and the hidden costs. It all comes down to one final critical question. Should you, as an entrepreneur, jump on GPT 5.2 now, or should you wait? Based on everything we've seen, I think there are two very different but equally valid answers to that.
So, the first path is to adopt now, but, and this is a big but, only if your business lives and dies by the very specific things 5.2 is good at. If you are building complex AI agents that have to reliably juggle multiple tools, if you're doing high-level coding where every bit of accuracy matters, or if your main product is about deep analysis of really long documents, then the performance gains here are probably worth that steep price hike. For that specific group of people, the upgrade is immediate and it's impactful.
The second path, though, is to wait. And this is probably for most people. If your use case is more general, a simple chatbot, writing marketing copy, basic tasks, the upgrade might not be big enough to justify the cost and the headache of switching over. If you're a startup watching every dollar, that 40% API price increase is a major roadblock. And frankly, if you've been burned before by these performance downgrades, it's completely reasonable to just wait a month or two and see if the quality holds up in the real world before you commit your own resources. So, here's the bottom line. ChatGPT 5.2 isn't magic. It's not the sci-fi leap to AGI that some of the headlines might want you to think. But it is meaningful. It's a targeted upgrade. It's a more professional, more reliable, and more powerful tool that's built specifically for complex, agent-like work. It's an evolution that solves real problems for a very specific audience. The most important thing is to understand who that audience is and to figure out if you're in it before you buy into all the hype.